Right now, inside your head, there is a memory that never happened. You believe it completely. You could describe it out loud, in detail, with confidence. You would defend it in an argument with a friend, and you would sound convincing because the certainty attached to it feels exactly like the certainty attached to every true thing you have ever known. Most people assume this is a glitch, a funny internet thing about a cartoon bear family and a misspelled name. But the real answer is far stranger. The false memory is not your brain breaking. The false memory is your brain working exactly as it was built to work. Start with the man the whole phenomenon is named after. Nelson Mandela died on the 5th of December, 2013. He was 95 years old. He died at home in Johannesburg after spending 27 years in prison and then 5 years as the president of South Africa. That is the record. That is what happened. And yet an enormous number of people remember something else entirely. They remember him dying in prison in the 1980s. They remember the news coverage. Some remember a speech given by his widow. Some remember riots in the streets afterward. None of that occurred. Around 2009, a researcher named Fiona Broom was at a conference talking casually about her memory of Mandela's death in prison. Strangers around her agreed. They had the same memory, the same decade, the same details. She started writing about it, and the name stuck. Here is where it stops being a one-off story. Think about the Monopoly board game. Picture the little mustached banker in the top hat. You can see him clearly. He has a monocle over one eye. He does not. He never has. Picture C-3PO from Star Wars. Gold from head to foot, polished, complete. Except one of his lower legs is silver, and it always was. Picture Pikachu. Yellow, red cheeks, lightning bolt tail with a black stripe at the tip. There is no black tip. There never was. Curious George has no tail. The fruit of the Loom logo has never contained a cornucopia. Darth Vader never says, "Luke, I am your father." The evil queen never says, "Mirror, mirror on the wall." So how does this happen? Not to one person. To millions of separate strangers who never met, who somehow arrived at the identical wrong answer. To understand that, you have to give up the thing you have quietly believed about your own mind since childhood. You believe your memory is a recording. You believe that somewhere in your skull there is footage of your 7th birthday, slightly degraded, slightly dusty, but essentially intact, waiting to be played back. That is not what is in there. In 1932, a British psychologist named Frederic Bartlett ran an experiment that should have ended that belief forever. He read participants a Native American folk tale called The War of the Ghosts. It was full of unfamiliar names, unfamiliar logic, and events that made no sense to a British audience of the time. Then he asked them to retell it. Days later, he asked again. Weeks later, again. The story did not fade evenly like an old photograph. It transformed. The unfamiliar became familiar. Canoes became boats. Strange spiritual details were quietly deleted or rewritten into something sensible. And crucially, the participants were not aware they were changing anything. They believed they were reciting it faithfully. Bartlett concluded something that still unsettles people 90 years later. Remembering is not retrieval. Remembering is reconstruction. Your brain does not store the past. It stores fragments and a set of rules about how the world usually works, and then it rebuilds the memory on demand, filling every gap with the most plausible guess available. You do not watch the memory. You rebuild it, live, every single time. And a rebuild can be tampered with. In 1974, Elizabeth Loftus and John Palmer showed people film of a car accident and then asked them a question about it. For some people, the question used the word hit. For others, smashed. That single word changed the answer. People given smashed estimated higher speeds. And a week later, when asked whether they had seen broken glass at the scene, the smashed group was significantly more likely to say yes. There was no broken glass in the film. One verb, one word, dropped into a question after the fact, and their memory of the event physically changed to accommodate it. Loftus spent the following decades pushing this further than almost anyone was comfortable with. In the mid-90s, she and Jacqueline Pickrell ran a study now known as Lost in the Mall. Participants were given short written accounts of childhood events supplied by family members. 3 were true. 1 was invented: getting lost in a shopping mall around age 5, crying, being rescued by an elderly stranger. About a quarter of participants remembered it. Not vaguely. They elaborated. They added the stranger's flannel shirt. They added what the mall smelled like. They added their own panic. When told afterward that one memory had been fabricated, many of them picked a real one as the fake. Does that sound like something that could not happen to you? In 2015, Julia Shaw and Stephen Porter went further still. Over 3 interview sessions, using suggestive questioning and a few true details from participants' actual pasts, they led young adults to generate detailed memories of committing a crime in their teenage years. A crime involving police contact. A crime that never took place. A majority of them produced it. Rich, sensory, emotional recollections of an event that did not exist. So your memory can be edited from outside. But that still does not explain why strangers converge on the same edit. That answer lives in how your brain files things in the first place. In 1995, Henry Roediger and Kathleen McDermott revived and refined a beautifully simple experiment. They read people a list of related words: bed, rest, awake, tired, dream, snooze, blanket, doze, slumber, nap. Then they asked what was on the list. People confidently reported hearing the word sleep, often more confidently than words that were actually read to them. Sleep was never on the list. It never is. It is the gist. It is the center of gravity that all those words orbit, and the brain, being an efficiency machine, stored the center instead of the coordinates. Now look back at that monocle. Your brain has a schema for rich old banker cartoon character. Top hat, tails, cane, mustache, monocle. The Monopoly man matches 4 out of 5, so your mind supplies the 5th, because supplying the 5th is what it does 8,000 times a day without telling you. Pikachu's tail gets a black tip because his ears have black tips, and symmetry is a rule your visual system loves. C3. P.O. loses his silver leg because Gold Robot is cleaner than Gold Robot with 1 silver leg. And clean is what survives storage. And here is the part that pushes this past a curiosity and into something genuinely strange. In 2022, Deepasri Prasad and Wilma Bainbridge at the University of Chicago published the first rigorous experimental study of what they named the visual Mandela Effect. They tested people on dozens of well-known icons, including the Monopoly Man, C3PO, and Pikachu. They found that the false memories were not random noise scattered in every direction. For specific images, people made the same specific error at high rates across independent participants. Then they tried to explain it away and could not. It was not about how long people looked at the image. It was not about which part they looked at. It was not simply about having seen an incorrect version somewhere. And when asked to draw the icons from memory, people drew the wrong version. Confidently, quickly, with no hesitation at all. Which raises the question that should make the back of your neck tingle. If your brain generates the same error as a stranger's brain, in the same place, on the same image, then that error is not personal. It is structural. It is a property of the species. You are not remembering wrong. You are remembering the way human beings remember. There is one more mechanism, and it is the one that removes your last hiding place. You might assume that a memory, once formed and locked in, is at least stable. Vulnerable at the moment of creation, sure, but safe afterward. In 2000, Karim Nader, working with Glenn Schaaf and Joseph Ledoux, tested that assumption. They took a memory that was already old and consolidated, brought it back to mind, and then interfered with the protein synthesis the brain needs to build lasting memories. The memory did not survive. The implication is enormous. Recalling a memory does not play it. Recalling a memory unlocks it. It becomes soft again, editable again, and then it gets written back to storage in whatever state it was in at that moment, including whatever mood you were in, whatever you had just been told, whatever you now believe about yourself. Which means the memories you revisit most often are the ones that have been rewritten most often. Your most treasured memory is your least reliable one. Read that again and notice how badly you want it to be false. So why would evolution build something this unreliable? Why would millions of years of selection pressure produce a mind that confidently invents monocles? Because your memory system was never a historian. It was never trying to preserve the past. Daniel Schachter, who cataloged these failures as the 7 sins of memory, argues that they are not defects bolted onto a good system. They are the cost of the features. A brain that stored gist instead of detail can recognize a new predator it has never seen before. A brain that reconstructs flexibly can take fragments of yesterday and assemble a tomorrow that has not happened yet. That is the actual job. Prediction. Your ancestors did not need an accurate archive of last summer. They needed to know where water tends to be, what a snake generally looks like, and which people usually cannot be trusted. Detail is expensive. Pattern is survival. So your mind kept the pattern and threw away the receipts. And it never mentioned it, because a creature that hesitated over the accuracy of its own memory was a creature that hesitated at exactly the wrong moment. Now bring that ancient machinery into the world you actually live in. You revisit your memories constantly, but not alone anymore. You revisit them in group chats, in comment threads, in arguments with people who were there and remember it differently, and in arguments with people who were not there at all. Every one of those conversations opens the file. You see a photograph and it overwrites the scene. You watch a clip of a childhood show and your memory quietly adjusts to it. You read a confident stranger's version of an event, and weeks later, some of their details are sitting in your account of it, wearing your handwriting. The Mandela Effect is what happens when that process runs on a scale it was never built for. Millions of brains using the same reconstruction rules, exposed to the same fragments, correcting each other, reinforcing each other, until an entire population is quietly remembering something that never occurred. And you cannot feel it happening. That is the cruel part. There is no sensation of an edit. There is no flicker, no seam, no warning. The rebuilt memory arrives wearing the exact same confidence as a true one, because confidence is generated separately from accuracy, and your brain has no reason to tell you which is which. So the next time someone insists it was spelled Berenstein, notice what you feel. Notice the sharpness of your certainty. Notice how obvious it seems. Then sit with the fact that certainty has never once been evidence. Right now, inside your head, there is a memory that never happened. It is not a flaw, and it is not a haunting, and it did not slip in through a crack between universes. It is there because the thing behind your eyes was never built to keep the past. It was built to keep you.